When I pulled into my driveway after visiting my son's grave, my neighbor of 12 years was standing at the edge of her lawn with both hands pressed flat against her chest, like she was trying to hold her heart in place. It was a Tuesday morning in late October, cool for Tucson, and she was still wearing her house slippers. She never came outside in her house slippers. "Frank," she said, "don't go in." I put the truck in park. "Carol, what's wrong?" She crossed the gravel strip between our properties faster than I'd seen her move since before her knee surgery. She grabbed my arm through the open window. "They went in about 20 minutes ago. Your daughter-in-law, and some man I've never seen before. They had a key, Frank. They let themselves right in." My chest did something I can't describe precisely. I spent 38 years as a structural engineer. I've stood on job sites while buildings shifted around me and never flinched. But hearing that someone had walked into my house with a key they had no right to own, that did something to me that concrete and steel never did. "Come inside," she said. "I need to show you something." Carol's kitchen smelled like coffee and the lavender she kept in a small pot on the windowsill. She'd been my neighbor since 2011, a retired school librarian from Akron who'd moved to Tucson after her husband passed. She brought me soup when my wife Helen died 4 years ago. She sat on my porch with me the night we got the call about my son. I'd shoveled her driveway during that freak January storm 2 years back, even though my back had been bothering me for weeks. We didn't talk every day, but we were the kind of neighbors who showed up when it counted. The kind you don't find anymore. She sat me down at her table and set her phone in front of me. Her hands were shaking slightly, the way hands shake when someone has been holding something terrible inside them for 20 minutes, and finally has somewhere to put it. "I was in my back bedroom doing my puzzle," she said. "I heard a car I didn't recognize. I looked out my side window, the one that faces your kitchen, and I saw them already inside. I'm sorry, Frank. I know it's not my business. But something felt wrong, so I kept watching. And then I heard her voice come through your window, and I started recording." She pressed play. The footage was shot through glass, slightly angled, the way a person films something when they're not sure whether they should. But it was clear enough. My kitchen, my table with the crack in the corner that I'd always meant to fix, my daughter-in-law, Renee, sitting across from a man I recognized immediately, her older brother, Curtis, who was an estate planning attorney out of Scottsdale. Renee had her reading glasses on. She only wore those when she was working through documents. Curtis's voice came through the speaker first. "The evaluation is already complete, filed and dated last week." Renee looked up from whatever she was reading. "And it'll hold up?" "It'll hold up. Dr. Farrell owes me a significant favor. He's written the report to indicate moderate cognitive decline, consistent with early-stage dementia. Difficulty with memory, impaired judgment, confusion regarding financial matters. But he's not confused about financial matters." She paused. "He asked me twice last month why his brokerage statements look different." Curtis set down his pen. "That's exactly the kind of question a conservator would handle for him. Once the petition is approved, those statements go to you. You review them. You manage them. He doesn't need to ask questions anymore because the questions aren't his to ask." I watched Renee's face on that small screen. I had looked at that face across a dinner table for 6 years, since my son Marcus brought her home for Christmas, and she'd helped Helen with the dishes without being asked, and I'd thought, this one is good. I had stood at the back of a church in Mesa and watched my son marry her. I had held her hand at the hospital when Marcus's car hit a patch of black ice on I-10, and he didn't survive it. I had believed, in the year and a half since we lost him, that we were grieving together. "What about the house?" Renee asked. "Once you're named conservator, the house falls under your management authority. You can pursue a sale on his behalf, in the interest of his care needs. Market's still strong in this zip code. We're looking at probably 4 to 10, 420. And his retirement accounts?" "Combined," Curtis said, rolling a pen between his fingers, "you're looking at somewhere around 1.8 million. The house gets you close to 600,000 on top of that. Altogether, a little over 2 million in assets under your control. What about Owen, my grandson, 23 years old, Marcus's son from his first marriage, before Renee? Owen had driven up from Nogales 3 times in the last 2 months just to have dinner with me. He called me every Sunday." Curtis waved one hand. His share is in a separate trust, locked until 27. You'd manage it as conservator. He can't access it, can't contest it until he's 30, with a 4-year statute on the petition. By then it's well within the settlement window. Renee was quiet for a moment. Does Owen suspect anything? Curtis shrugged. He's 23, and he lives an hour away. He sees what you tell him to see. Carol stopped the video. I sat at her kitchen table and I did not move for a long time. 38 years I spent calculating load tolerances, stress points, the precise weight a structure could bear before it failed. And I had never once calculated the weight that could come from inside your own family. Can you send me that video? I asked. Already sent it, she said. 3 copies. I emailed it to myself, put it on a flash drive in my freezer, and texted it to my daughter in Cleveland. She doesn't know what it is yet, but she has it. I looked at this 71-year-old woman in her house slippers at 11 in the morning. Why did you do all that? She folded her hands on the table. Because Helen told me once, maybe 2 years before she passed, that she worried about you. Not about your health, about you being alone. She said you trusted people too completely. She said it was one of the things she loved about you, and one of the things that scared her. She made me promise to watch out for you. So I've been watching. I couldn't speak for a moment. I just nodded. Carol looked at me steadily. Now, what are you going to do? I didn't go home that night. Renee and Curtis were still inside when I left Carol's kitchen, and walking back into my own house would tell them I knew. I needed them not to know. Not yet. I drove to a Hampton Inn near the airport and paid cash for 2 nights, which felt absurd for a man who had lived in the same zip code for 22 years. I ordered a sandwich from the vending machine and sat on the edge of the bed with my laptop open. First thing I checked was my financial accounts. At first glance, they looked normal, but I had learned as an engineer that the most dangerous structural failures are the ones that look stable until the moment they aren't. So I looked deeper. I went back 90 days, and I found it. 6 weeks ago, Renee had been added as an authorized signer on my primary checking account. I had not authorized that. I had not seen any paperwork. I pulled up my brokerage account and found the same thing. Her name had been added as a secondary account holder with full viewing access. And in my investment portfolio, a beneficiary designation had been quietly amended. It had been my son, Marcus. Now it listed Renee. Marcus had been gone for 19 months. They had changed his name off the account within the last 60 days. I pulled up my contacts and called a number I hadn't used in 3 years. Walter Drummond had been my attorney since I bought my first house in 1994. He was 68, semi-retired, still kept an office in downtown Tucson, and had the kind of legal instincts that came only from having seen human beings behave badly for 4 decades. He answered on the second ring. "Frank, it's been a while." "Walter," I said, "I need to see you tomorrow morning, and I need you to clear your schedule." There was a pause. "How bad is it? I need you to tell me." "That's why I'm calling you." "I'll be in at 8, he said. "Bring everything." I spent the rest of that night making a list. It was something I'd always done on complicated jobs. Write down every unknown, every risk, every dependency. The list I made that night in a Hampton Inn with a vending machine sandwich going cold beside me was the most important one I'd ever written. By 6 in the morning I had a plan. The first thing I needed was a clean cognitive evaluation. Renee and Curtis had obtained a fraudulent one through Dr. Farrell. I needed to bury it under something unimpeachable. I called Dr. Lena Vasquez, a neuropsychologist I'd been referred to 2 years earlier after a minor concussion from a job site accident. She had tested me thoroughly then and found nothing of concern. I reached her office when it opened at 8 and explained the situation as plainly as I could. She was quiet when I finished. Then she said, "Can you come in Thursday afternoon?" I told her I'd be there. The evaluation took most of Thursday. Memory tests, executive function assessments, processing speed, verbal recall, spatial reasoning. When it was done, Dr. Vasquez sat across from me with a legal pad full of notes and looked at me the way a doctor looks at a patient when the results are not what the patient feared. "Frank," she said, "your cognitive function is excellent." For 66, that would be true. For any age, it's true. Whoever wrote that other evaluation either conducted it improperly or fabricated the findings entirely. I want to put that in writing. Get it notarized, I said. She nodded. I'll have it ready by Monday. The second thing I needed was access to my own house. I waited until I was certain Renee had left. I called her cell phone on a pretense, said I'd left my reading glasses at her place and was she home? She said no, she was at work. I said no problem. I drove to my own house at 2 in the afternoon and stood in my own driveway and felt the strangeness of it. They had changed the lock on the front door, a deadbolt I didn't recognize, keyed differently from the one I'd had for a decade. I called a locksmith, different company from whoever they'd used, and had him meet me at the property. I showed him my ID, my deed of ownership, and a utility bill with my name and address. He changed the locks in 40 minutes. Brand new deadbolt, 2 keys, both to me. While I was inside, I did something else. I installed cameras. I'd ordered them the night before at the hotel on my laptop. 5 of them, small and wireless, the kind that clip to a bookshelf or tuck behind a picture frame. Living room, kitchen, my home office, the hallway outside the master bedroom, the garage entrance. Each one connected to a secure cloud server through an app on my phone, password protected, accessible only to me. I set them to record continuously, with motion alerts sent to my phone. Then I changed the locks again, meaning I also made a copy of the new key and put it in an envelope with a note to Carol, who put it in her freezer next to the flash drive. I went back to the hotel. The third thing I needed was someone who knew how to take this apart legally. Walter Drummond's office smelled like old paper and the kind of quiet that accumulates in rooms where serious decisions get made. He read everything I gave him, Carol's video, the unauthorized account changes, the amended beneficiary designation, Dr. Vasquez's preliminary notes without saying a word. When he finished, he set the papers down and looked at me over his glasses. This is elder abuse, Frank. It's financial fraud, it's conspiracy, and if this Farrell falsified a psychological evaluation, it's medical fraud as well. Can you stop the conservatorship petition? I can slow it down. Procedural challenges, requests for independent evaluation, motions to delay the hearing. I can probably buy you 3 weeks. What do you need 3 weeks for? Evidence, I said. I need them to keep moving. Walter leaned back. What kind of evidence? The kind they don't know they're creating. He studied me for a moment. Be careful. People who do this, it's not impulsive. It's planned. If she figures out, she'll move faster. She won't figure it out, I said. Not until I decide she does. I spent the next 11 days watching. The cameras were better than I expected. Clear audio within 12 feet. Clear video in low light. Motion triggered and time-stamped. Day 3. Renee came into my house in the early afternoon. She went directly to my home office and tried the bottom drawer of my desk, which I keep locked. She had a small tool in her hand, a tension wrench, the kind locksmiths use, and she worked at the lock for about 8 minutes before giving up. Then she went to the bookshelf and pulled books out one by one, fanning the pages, looking for papers. She spent 45 minutes in my office. She found nothing because I had already removed everything important. My financial documents, my will, the deed to the house, my medical records, all of it was now in Walter's safe on 5th Avenue. Day 5. Curtis came alone. He went straight to my office as well, opened my laptop and found it password protected. He sat at my desk and made a phone call. She won't have anything in writing where he can find it, he said to someone on the other end. But if the petition gets delayed, we need a backup. Is Morrison still available? His voice dropped. No, I mean for testimony. A second opinion carries more weight if the first one gets challenged. Get me a number. I saved the footage, backed it up twice. Day 7. This was the one I hadn't anticipated. Owen came. I watched on my phone from the hotel room as my grandson let himself in with the spare key I'd given him 3 years ago. He was wearing his work jacket, still had his Nogales badge clipped to the pocket. He walked through the house slowly, the way someone walks through a space when they're looking for something they can't name. He stood in the kitchen for a while. He went to the living room and stood in front of the framed photo on the mantel, Helen and me at the Grand Canyon, 2015. Then he sat down on the couch and put his head in his hand. My phone buzzed 20 seconds later. Grandpa, Renee says you've been staying somewhere else, that you're confused about some things. Are you okay? I'm at your house. I stared at the message. Renee had gotten to him. Not fully. Not yet he was here, looking for me, which meant he wasn't certain. But she had planted something. I typed back. I'm fine. Needed some space after visiting your dad's grave. Let's meet for dinner tomorrow. I'll call you. His reply came quickly. Okay. Please call. I'm worried. I'll explain everything, I wrote. I promise. Day 9. The footage I had been waiting for. Renee and Curtis in my living room. Late evening. They had been drinking. There was a bottle of wine on my coffee table that they hadn't been there when I'd last checked the cameras. The sound was excellent from where I'd placed the living room unit. What's the timeline now? Renee asked. Curtis swirled his glass. Hearing's been pushed 2 weeks. His attorney filed a delay motion. Some procedural nonsense about independent evaluations. Can they get one? Not in 2 weeks. Not one that would hold up against Farrell's. Renee was quiet. What if he already knows? He doesn't know. Curtis put his feet up on my coffee table. Frank Hollis spent 40 years building bridges and underpasses. He's 66 years old, he lives alone, and the most complicated thing he does every week is drive to the cemetery and watch Jeopardy. He has no idea. Renee exhaled slowly. What's the total after fees? Curtis smiled. Liquid assets plus the house. After my 30%, you're looking at 1.5, 1.6. And Owen's trust? Stays in trust. You manage it as conservator. If he tries to contest at 27, the 4-year look-back period on the petition means he'd need grounds to challenge the original filing, which he won't have, because the original filing will look completely clean. Renee lifted her glass. To family. Curtis clinked his against hers. To family. I saved that footage 4 times. Sent it to Walter, to Carol, to a private encrypted email address I'd created at the hotel, and to a USB drive I kept in my coat pocket every hour of every day. The next morning I met Owen for breakfast at a diner in Marana, neutral ground. He showed up 5 minutes early, which he'd been doing since he was 16. Punctuality was the thing Marcus had drilled into him hardest, and it had stuck. He looked like his father around the eyes. He always had. He slid into the booth across from me and studied my face. You look fine, he said, which seemed like more of an observation than a greeting. I am fine. I slid my tablet across the table. I need you to watch something before you say anything else. All of it. Don't stop it. He looked at the tablet, then at me. What is this? The truth. Play it. He watched in silence. First, the footage Carol had recorded through the kitchen window, Renee and Curtis at my table. Then the later footage from day 9, the living room, the wine, the 30%, to family. I watched his face move through confusion, and then something harder, something that settled into his jaw and stayed there. When it ended, he didn't look up immediately. He kept his eyes on the blank screen. She told me you were getting confused, he said, that you'd been mixing up dates, forgetting conversations. She said she was worried you might do something impulsive with the money, and that she and Marcus had talked about this before he stopped. Marcus never talked to Renee about me, I said. Marcus and I talked to each other directly. We always did. Your father would not have done this. Owen's jaw worked. I know. I should have called you sooner, I said. I should have told you what I noticed, instead of waiting until I had proof. That's on me. He shook his head hard. No, I should have, she said to give you space. That calling too much would stress you. I believed her. He looked at me then, eyes red at the edges. I just lost my dad, Grandpa. And then she made me think I was losing you too, just differently. And I couldn't. I reached across the table and put my hand over his. I know. That's what she was counting on. People who do this, they find the tender spot and they press on it. You were grieving. She used that. He was quiet for a moment. What do you need me to do? I need you to come to my house on Thursday evening. I need you to act like nothing has changed between you and your stepmother. Can you do that? His jaw tightened. Yes. And when the time comes, I need you to stand with me. He looked at me steadily. Wherever you need me, he said. I'm there. The confrontation happened on a Thursday evening at 7 o'clock. I had called Renee 2 days before and told her, in a voice I kept carefully flat, that I thought it was time we sat down together and talked about the future, about the house, the finances, what came next. I told her I'd been doing a lot of thinking since visiting Marcus's grave, and that I wanted to work through some things as a family. She agreed immediately, which told me everything she was ready to move. She just needed me to open the door. She arrived at 7 with Curtis, which I had expected. She was carrying a leather portfolio. What she did not know was that Carol was watching through a live stream from one of my cameras on the laptop in her kitchen next door, with Walter Drummond's cell number already dialed and waiting. That Walter himself was parked half a block down the street in his Buick with a Pima County Sheriff's detective named Rodriguez, who had spent 12 years in financial crimes before transferring to general investigations, and still carried the instincts of those 12 years in the way he watched people's hands when they spoke. That Owen was in my kitchen, the door pulled to, waiting, and that the entire conversation would be captured in real time on 3 simultaneous recording devices. Renee walked in like she had always walked into my house, familiar, easy, like the floor plan was already hers. She touched the back of the couch as she passed it. The small, proprietary gesture of someone who has already begun to think of a space as belonging to them. "Frank," she said, "you look well." "I feel well," I said. "Thank you both for coming. Sit down." They sat on the couch. I remained standing near the fireplace, which put the living room camera directly behind me, capturing both their faces. "I want to talk about the future," I said. "Of course," Renee said. "I think that's so important." She started to open the portfolio. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the television above the fireplace. The screen came on. "I want to start with this," I said. The footage began. The kitchen window, recording first, their voices filling my living room. The conversation about the conservatorship. Dr. Farrell, the doctor's report, the house, Owen's trust. The color drained from Renee's face inside the first 30 seconds. Curtis stood. "This is inadmissible. Washington State has a..." "We're in Arizona," I said. "One-party consent state. And this is my home. This is..." He stopped. "There's more," I said. The day 9 footage played. The living room. The wine. 1.5, 1.6 after fees. Owen's trust. To family. Renee's composure had been very good up until that moment. It broke quietly, like a structure that fails, not in an explosion, but in a slow and irreversible lean. "Frank." Her voice had changed. "I was trying to protect you. Marcus always worried about you being alone. He always said..." "Marcus never said anything like this to you," I said. "I know, because Marcus and I talked every week until the week he died. We had no secrets. You've been forgetting things. You've been..." "Dr. Vasquez completed a full neuropsychological evaluation on me last Thursday," I said. "I have the notarized report on Walter Drummond's desk. My cognitive function is rated excellent across every domain she assessed. Dr. Farrell's report is fabricated. We have the financial records showing $15,000 transferred to an account in his name 6 days after my appointment with him." Curtis sat back down. "We also have the handwriting analysis on the beneficiary amendment to my investment account," I said. "And the documentation showing that Renee was added as a signer on my checking account without my authorization or signature. The original signature on that form," I pulled up the image on my phone and turned it toward them, "is Marcus's, my son, who died 19 months ago." Renee looked at the image and did not speak. The kitchen door opened. Owen walked in. Renee turned. The expression on her face when she saw him was the most honest one I'd seen from her in years. It was pure shock, the face of someone who has made a calculation and suddenly discovered a variable they forgot to account for. "Owen," she started. "Don't," he said. His voice was quiet. He didn't raise it. He'd always been like his father that way. The anger went inward and came out steady. "I watched that video, Mom. I watched the whole thing. You told me he was losing his mind. You told me Dad would have wanted this. I believed you because I needed to believe something." He stopped. "I should have called him instead. Sweetheart, I'm not your audience right now," Owen said. He crossed to where I was standing and stood beside me. The front door opened. Walter came in first. Detective Rodriguez behind him, and 2 uniformed deputies behind her. Renee Hollis, Rodriguez said. Curtis Ames. She had her badge out. Pima County Sheriff's Office. We have warrants for your arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to obtain a fraudulent medical evaluation. Please stand. Renee stood slowly. Her leather portfolio slid off her lap and fell open on my floor. Documents fanning out across the hardwood, the conservatorship petition, the forged authorization forms, a handwritten note with Farrell's name, and a phone number circled twice. You did this, she said to me. Her voice had gone very quiet. Everything Marcus built. Everything we were supposed to. Marcus didn't build this, I said. I did. 38 years of work. And it belongs to the people who are still here. Rodriguez moved forward. I want a lawyer, Curtis said immediately. He had gone to some remote professional place behind his eyes, the place attorneys go when they understand that what happens next will be decided by other attorneys. Ma'am, Rodriguez said to Renee, do you understand the charges? Renee was looking at Owen. He held her gaze, and didn't look away, and didn't say anything. They took them out through my front door. Walter stayed. He shook my hand and then Owen's. He collected the documents that had spilled from Renee's portfolio and added them to the folder he was carrying. He told me the conservatorship petition would be formally dismissed within 10 days. He told me the account amendments would be reversed within the week. He told me it was going to take some time. I know, I said. That's all right. He left. Carol came over 20 minutes later with a plate of cookies and tears running down her face, which she was furiously attempting to deny by pressing her lips together very tightly. I hated every minute of this, she said. I know. Thank you. She sat at my kitchen table and ate 3 of the cookies herself and talked about nothing important for an hour, which is exactly what I needed. The trial was 4 months later. Both Renee and Curtis were convicted. Renee received a sentence of 4 years. Curtis, who as the architect of the scheme received the heavier hand, received 6, along with permanent disbarment. Dr. Farrell surrendered his medical license as part of a negotiated plea and avoided prison time, which I considered a reasonable trade for the testimony he provided on the financial arrangement between himself and Curtis. The testimony was detailed and damning and left very little for the defense to work with. The conservatorship petition was dismissed. The account changes were reversed. The amended beneficiary designation was restored. It goes to Owen now, as it should have all along. Owen took a job offer in Tucson in February. He's renting a place about 4 miles from me. He comes to dinner twice a week, and he texts me every morning, 1 line, something he saw or heard that he thought I'd find interesting. Last week it was about a bridge they're planning to rebuild in southern New Mexico, the engineering specs. He'd taken a photo of the article and added a caption, "Thought you'd have opinions." I did. 3 months after the trial, Owen and I drove out to Saguaro National Park on a Saturday morning and walked one of the longer trails, the kind you have to take slow, because the elevation works on you in ways you don't fully feel until you're 2 miles in. We had sandwiches in our packs and water and nothing pressing to get back to. We were sitting on a flat rock eating our sandwiches when he asked me the question I had been expecting him to ask. Grandpa, how did you not fall apart when you found out what she was doing? I thought about it the way I always think about structural questions from the foundation up. I did fall apart, I said, not visibly. But that night in the hotel room, after I watched that video the first time I fell apart, I was angry and scared, and I felt stupid, which might have been the worst part. I had missed it. I had sat across from her at Thanksgiving and at the hospital after your father died, and I had not seen it. He was quiet. But I've spent 40 years looking at things that could fail, I said. And the thing I learned early on is that when you see the failure point, you don't have the option of being devastated. You have to think. You have to be useful. You deal with the emotions after the structure is sound. He nodded slowly. And honestly, I said, Carol helped. Having one person who already knew and already had a plan that was the difference, I wasn't alone with it. That matters more than I knew. Owen looked out at the saguaros, the ones that are 100 years old, and look at. What about forgiveness? He asked. Do you think you'll ever? I don't know, I said. I think about it. I think forgiveness is less about what the other person deserves and more about whether you want to carry the weight of not forgiving. I haven't decided yet. I might be carrying it a while longer. He thought about that. What about me? He said. I almost helped her. I was almost on the wrong side of this because I wanted to believe my mother cared about me and that she was protecting you and I. He stopped. I let her isolate you. I let her... No, I said. She isolated you. She worked very deliberately to put distance between us. That is not the same thing as you choosing it. But I should have pushed through it. After Dad died, I should have... Your father and I talked every week, I said. I know that because we chose to. It doesn't happen on its own. After he was gone, you and I let the distance grow a little because we were both grieving, and we didn't have his voice in the middle keeping us connected. That's human. That is not on you. He was quiet for a long time. The trail stretched out ahead of us, switchbacking up through the rocks toward a ridge where you could probably see clear to the Santa Rita Mountains on a day this clear. I want to do the Sunday calls, Owen said. The ones you and Dad used to do. I'd like that, I said. We ate the rest of our sandwiches. The sky was enormous and blue the way Arizona sky is in late winter. The kind of blue that feels almost aggressive in how much of it there is. I thought about Helen, who had told Carol to watch out for me, because she knew I trusted too completely. I thought about Marcus, who had called me every week because he understood that love is mostly just choosing to show up in the small, ordinary ways until there are no more weeks left to do it. I thought about Carol, who had been watching through a kitchen window at the right moment for the right reasons, and who had copies hidden in 3 places because she was practical and thorough in the way people become when they have lived long enough to know that the world is not always careful with the things that matter. I thought about Owen beside me, who looked like his father around the eyes and was learning, at 23, that the family that holds is not always the one you were born into. Sometimes it's the one you choose, and it chooses you back. I've been 66 years old for 8 months now. I estimate I have maybe 20 good years left, if my knees cooperate and I keep walking trails like this one on Saturdays. I plan to use those years on the people who have earned them. On Owen. On Carol. On the friends who called during the trial just to say they were there. On the work I still do as a consultant, 2 days a week, because there are still bridges being built, and I still have opinions about how they should hold. Not on people who looked at what I built across 38 years and saw a number. Not on people who looked at my son's grave and saw an opportunity. Here's what I would tell you. If you're watching from wherever you are, and any of this feels familiar, your instincts matter. When something feels wrong in the people closest to you, that feeling is data. Don't explain it away. Don't decide you're being uncharitable. Follow it carefully and quietly until you know what it is. Protect your documents, your accounts, your medical records. Know who has access to what, and make sure that access was yours to give. Have a lawyer you trust, and keep that relationship current. And find your Carol, your neighbor, your old colleague, your friend from 40 years back, the person who will stand in their house slippers in the driveway and stop you before you walk into the wrong thing. Because the people who want to take from you are counting on you being alone. They are counting on the grief and the age and the ordinary human tendency to believe that the people in your house are there because they care about you. Make sure you're not alone. That's the whole thing. Make sure there's someone who has copies in 3 different places, just in case. I picked up my water bottle and looked over at Owen. Ready to keep going? I asked. He stood up, brushed the crumbs off his jacket. Ready, he said. We walked up toward the ridge together, into all that blue.